My name is Shanna, residing in a cozy suburban home with my beloved 4-year-old son Jeremiah and my husband Darwin, with whom I've shared 6 fulfilling years of marriage. Our household runs on shared responsibilities for both chores and childcare, and I put in dedicated effort every day. Jeremiah, a joyfully gentle and well-mannered child, brings immense happiness, while Darwin's unwavering support eases the demands of my professional life. With Jeremiah settling into kindergarten smoothly and thriving, each day brims with his infectious delight. Amidst this contentment, one concern occasionally nags at me, a prominent figure among the kindergarten parents who assumes a leadership role among moms. I first noticed her a month after Jeremiah started kindergarten, during a routine pickup. "That mom over there, isn't she a bit overbearing?" I stood by the gate, waiting for my son to emerge, when I overheard nearby women chatting. Initially, I thought I misheard, but they were gossiping about another parent. The leader of the group spoke with an air of authority, her followers giggling in agreement. "Seriously, she dresses so old-fashioned. Doesn't she care about her appearance?" "Yeah, like Jody always says." The name Jody stood out among them. Since my husband and I took turns picking up our son, I hadn't encountered her before. Normally, I avoided such conversations, but in that moment, I couldn't hold back. "Excuse me, but that's really not appropriate to say." I spoke up calmly, addressing them as I would a child. The atmosphere instantly chilled, the leader's face stiffened, and her followers paled. Just as the central mom was about to reply, my son dashed over. "Mommy, today was so much fun." As her son leaped into her arms, the woman abruptly left. At the time, I sensed a lingering awkwardness, but the incident foreshadowed what would happen the very next day. To my surprise, I found myself unexpectedly leading my son's kindergarten activities from then on. It might be challenging, but I think I'll adjust within a month. Nah, I've already coordinated with everyone at work. If I manage my time well, it should be fine. Fortunately, my job's flexibility allowed me to arrange my schedule. After notifying my colleagues of my planned absences, I rushed out of the office and into the kindergarten. Yet as soon as I stepped into the parking lot, a sense of unease gripped me. I sense the other moms are looking at me and whispering about something. When I glance their way, they quickly avert their eyes, clearly excluding me. Wow, it's been a while since I felt like an outsider. Approaching the whispering group of moms, they scatter like startled birds. I suppress a laugh and choose to wait quietly by the wall for my son. "That's Jeremiah's mom. Seems she's quite stylish, isn't she?" Their murmurs reach me faintly. It's hard to ignore them, even though I'm unsure if they're discussing me. "What's the fuss? She just dresses a bit fancier, that's all." The voice was so loud that I instinctively glanced sideways, meeting Jody's heavily made-up eyes. Inside, I thought, "Who are you to judge?" but kept my thoughts to myself. She smirked knowingly as our gazes locked. "Oh dear, I apologize. Did you catch that?" Her entourage chuckled at her remark, drawing attention from other moms nearby. Uncertain how to respond, but unwilling to back down, I met Jody's gaze squarely. "I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Your voice was so soft. Could you repeat that?" As I expected, my direct challenge unsettled Jody. Those who assert dominance often falter under scrutiny, yet she unexpectedly held her ground. "Uh-oh, this isn't good. What should I do now? Is she angry? It feels intimidating." She momentarily backed down but swiftly pivoted to portray me as the aggressor. Her followers caught on, turning away from me and murmuring among themselves. Just as I prepared to respond, Jody's child hurried over. "Let's go, there's someone scary here." Upon Jody's command, her followers quickly piled into their cars. Frustration welled up as I watched them depart. One of Jody's companions accidentally tripped, spilling the contents of her bag with a sudden clatter. "Oh!" Various items scattered across a 6-foot radius, yet none of Jody's group offered assistance as they hurried into their vehicles. Left with no choice, I hurried over to lend a hand. "Are you alright? I'm sorry." "Hey, hurry up and get in," Jody urged from the open passenger window. Sensing her mother's impatience, the girl beside her burst into tears. "Oh, I'm sorry. Please don't cry." "Hey, is that notebook over there yours too?" "Yes, it is. I'm sorry." I hurried to retrieve the notebook that had flown the farthest, brushing off the gravel. Jody, visibly agitated as she tapped on the car, finally sighed heavily. "That's enough. Don't speak to me ever again." She slammed the window shut. The girl knelt in shock on the ground, and the car sped away, leaving a cloud of dust. "Here, is this everything?" "Wait, what?" Perplexed by the girl's tears, my son conveniently returned. I suggested he play with her daughter while I approached Jody. "Need a tissue?" "Yes, please, thank you." Handing her a tissue from a distance, I watched our children playing tag in the park square. As we began chatting, I discovered her daughter was in the same class as Jeremiah. It made me realize my own lack of social interactions. It was then I learned her name was Letitia. Well, I've always just gone with the flow. No, that's perfectly fine. More importantly, among the items that had spilled from her bag earlier, I noticed something intriguing. A limited edition cosmetic prized by aficionados. "Are you into cosmetics?" I inquired. Letitia's face brightened. Upon closer inspection, I noticed her well-applied makeup, a stark contrast to Jody's style. "Yes, I do. I bought this based on a recommendation from an app I use." She showed me her phone, revealing the familiar logo, an app developed by my company. I hesitated, unsure whether to disclose this information. "I heard it's an app from Mr. McLaren's company. I like it because it has great recommendations, although I might need to reconsider using it now." "What?" "Jody's last name is McLaren, but we don't have anyone by that name among our employees." Do you like cosmetics too, Shanna?" "Just call me Shanna." "Yes, I absolutely love them." Despite my curiosity about Jody, I ended up chatting with Letitia for quite some time, letting the children entertain themselves. Before I realized it, 30 minutes had flown by, and I found myself offering Letitia a ride in my car. It marked the first time I'd made a mom friend, and it felt wonderfully natural to converse. Back home, I must have been smiling unconsciously because my husband chuckled. "Looks like you had a good time." "Yeah, I really did. I made a new parent friend today." I recounted the day's events to my husband. He listened with a smile as I shared about Letitia, but his expression darkened when I mentioned Jody. It turned out he knew about her and shared various rumors, like how she had pressured mothers into school-related responsibilities they disliked, or her reputation for intimidating others with harsh words. There was even a story about her allegedly isolating a mother and her child in school, prompting them to transfer. "I know you're strong, but it might be wise to limit your interactions with her. I've heard rumors that she's excluded children from activities before." "Really? Okay, thanks for letting me know." I was intrigued by my husband's cautionary words, though I didn't dwell on them initially. After all, Jody wasn't a business associate. She was someone I'd likely encounter throughout my life. But soon, the situation evolved into something I couldn't easily dismiss. Sometime after forming a bond with Letitia's family, Jody unexpectedly approached me. We hadn't exchanged a glance since our initial encounter. "I've heard about you," she began. Wondering what she could possibly know to seek me out in the parking lot, I waited, puzzled. Jody's smirk revealed her intent. "You're some big shot at a company, right? No wonder you drive such a fancy car." I pondered who could have leaked such information to her. By referring to some company, Jody might not have known the specifics of my role. Stepping out of my car, I found myself swiftly surrounded by Jody and her clique. With her arms folded, Jody motioned towards me. "What do you want?" "You. I'll let you into our circle. Let's be friends from now on." I never expressed any interest in joining her circle, though. That thought lingered as I recalled my husband's advice. Endure if it's just me facing exclusion, but protect Jeremiah from any harm at all costs. Maybe I should play along for now, I mused, deciding to respond casually. "Oh, thank you. I'm glad," I replied without much emotion, but Jody appeared satisfied with my response. She promptly arranged to have lunch with me the next day, leaving in high spirits with her entourage. What was that all about? I muttered to myself, already feeling disheartened at the thought of lunch with them. Just then, I sensed someone watching me. Turning around, I spotted Letitia observing me from a distance. Since that incident, she had been excluded from Jody's circle. "Letitia, why are you hiding over there?" I'm sorry, Shanna. Letitia confided in me that Jody had called her the previous night and interrogated her about me. Inadvertently, Letitia revealed that I held a position as a company president. "I'm sorry. I think Jody might be planning to take advantage of you. Apparently, she has a history of exploiting the weakest member of the group by making them foot the bill for lunches and parties." Up until now, that person has been Letitia. What's that all about? While I initially believed it wise to keep my distance from Jody, I couldn't stand by while she mistreated Letitia, such a kind person. I resolved to alter my approach. We'll be connected to this kindergarten for another 3 years. If we have another child, it'll be even longer. With Jody's family having multiple children, if I'm going to be involved with them for so long, maybe it's better to take a stand. But I'd just been invited to join that group, I told Letitia, seeing despair wash over her face, almost bringing her to tears. So, we won't be able to talk anymore, right? Jody apparently forbids group members from interacting with any moms she's excluded. It's shocking how controlling she can be. No, that's not true at all. I just wanted to surprise everyone. I really don't think this is appropriate. The following day, the cafe where I had been invited for lunch happened to be conveniently close to my office. Jody had commandeered the terrace seating, positioning herself at the center. You know, you have quite the stylish look. It suits you well, of course. Being a CEO must be quite something. I bet you work hard and earn well, right? Despite her occasional patronizing tone, I wasn't in the mood for this conversation today. Speaking of which, that app is really gaining popularity these days. Outside the cafe, a large billboard atop a nearby building prominently displayed an advertisement for our company's app. This prompted me to broach the topic. Yes, it's quite popular these days. In fact, my husband recently joined that company. Oh, really? Did he just switch jobs? He was offered a tempting position and made the move. You should join us for his job celebration. As expected, she took the bait. However, her statements contained several inaccuracies. To clarify, her husband hadn't started working there yet. He had only received an offer with his first day scheduled for next week. Furthermore, he hadn't been headhunted. He had applied independently. They probably assumed I was unaware, but I happen to be quite knowledgeable about that company. Oh, I'm sorry, I have to leave now, I said, excusing myself. You're quite busy as a CEO, huh? Take care, Jody remarked with a smile. Perplexed by her words, I tilted my head slightly, prompting a disbelieving smile from Jody. You may be the CEO, but you're still the newest member here, right? So I think you should cover the bill. It became clear that Letitia's concerns were justified. They evidently viewed me merely as someone to foot the bill. The conversation had turned into mean-spirited gossip, leaving me feeling disgusted by the way Letitia was targeted. Masking my feelings with a forced smile, I settled the bill and left. Everything is set now. All that's left is to deliver the final blow. At Jody's husband's job transfer celebration that evening, I approached him. Mr. McLaren, burning the midnight oil on your first day, boss? I'm sorry, just a bit longer. I really want to get up to speed quickly. It was Mr. McLaren's inaugural day at work, and he appeared somewhat cautious. Much like during his interview, he seemed entirely unremarkable. How about we all go out for drinks to mark your first day? I'll invite everyone. I'd love to, but my wife has already arranged a dinner to celebrate my job change. I'm sorry, can we do it next week? I knew he wouldn't show up. Besides, I was acquainted with his wife. I had made a reservation at an upscale steakhouse, coincidentally, where I was also invited. Leaving the office, I picked up Letitia in my car, and we headed to the restaurant. You took your time, didn't you? The event has already begun, Letitia remarked as she got in. My goodness, the star of the evening should be her husband, yet the party is already underway. Upon entering the restaurant, Jody's gaze immediately fell on Letitia, and she visibly scowled. What a grump. You weren't supposed to be here, were you? Well, I just happened to run into her and invited her. I apologize. Could you please order a drink? Jody and her group had occupied the larger table, while Letitia and I found ourselves at a separate table for two. Jody ignored us completely, absorbed in her own conversation. If I hadn't brought Letitia, would I be sitting alone in the corner? Oh well, it doesn't matter. Okay. After chatting with Letitia for about 30 minutes, Jody glanced back as if suddenly remembering, a malicious smile clearly directed at us. Here, you'll take care of the bill, boss, Jody said, her entourage chuckling along. I joined in with a laugh. It was all too predictable. Sure, no problem. Since you're part of the group now, it's only fair. Oh, he'll be arriving shortly, Jody added. At that moment, I excused myself and headed down the hallway toward the restroom. Eavesdropping discreetly, I overheard Jody's husband entering the restaurant. Hey everyone, sorry for the delay. Let's celebrate this new chapter together. Since you've joined that company, everyone's been downloading the app. Despite their evident indulgence in food and drinks, diverting attention from the guests of honor, I couldn't help but think, thanks for downloading the app, but isn't this place a bit too extravagant? Don't worry about it. The new mom will foot the bill, someone quipped. Must be nice to be rich, another chimed in, sparking laughter from the group. Before I could return to my seat, they began toasting without me. I sighed quietly as I slipped back to my seat on the outskirts of the room. By chance, I ended up behind Mr. McLaren, positioned just right so he couldn't see me. You know what I think? Men and women should have distinct roles. I believe, she stated loudly enough for me to hear. This was one of Jody's recurring topics. You see, if a mom isn't at home, the kids are bound to suffer, right? Besides, I don't think women can handle work responsibilities effectively. Now, hold on. My current boss is actually a woman, I interjected. Exactly my point. I'm sure you'd do a better job if you were in charge, Jody retorted. That was the final straw for me. I couldn't contain my laughter, and Jody shot me a glare. What's so funny? It's the truth. I don't know what kind of company you're accustomed to, but those beliefs are better left in the past. What? No, I'm sorry, but the app my company created seems to be used by all of you, and it's doing great, I asserted. Jody's expression twisted at my words. Mr. McLaren, perplexed, turned to me, his face draining of color. What nonsense are you talking about? He asked. That's enough. Jody interjected sharply. Just pay up and leave. Hey, why are you talking to the boss like that? Great job today, Mr. McLaren. Congratulations on the new job. Noticing my empty glass, Mr. McLaren hurriedly brought over a beer bottle. I politely declined, observing Jody's expression contorting further. Her followers, unable to grasp the situation, murmured in confusion. Mr. McLaren apologized profusely, almost bowing his head in regret. Ma'am, President, my wife has been terribly rude. I apologize sincerely, he said with urgency. No, this is unacceptable, Jody retorted sharply. Just kidding, I interjected with a light-hearted tone, trying to diffuse the tension. Mr. McLaren grasped onto me, continuing to apologize fervently. Quickly, I apologized and returned to ease the atmosphere. Let's ensure this doesn't spoil the evening, I added, attempting to lighten the mood. Shanna, you'll still be friends with us, right? You're not really going to fire my husband, are you? Jody said, her smile dripping with flattery. Considering her large family, losing her husband's job would be quite a blow, she continued. No worries, I won't be letting him go, I assured her. My Jeremiah hasn't taken a liking to me, has he? She asked rhetorically, then added sharply, Oh, excuse me, Letitia, you're in the way. Jody tried to push Letitia aside, who was standing beside me. What a distasteful person. Let's go, leave this mediocre woman behind, Jody sneered. You'll still be friends with me, won't you? I asked pointedly. No, the mediocre one here is you. Letitia is my dear friend. She's a far better person than you, I asserted firmly. Jody's voice rose in anger, her demeanor turning furious. I quickly apologized to the restaurant owner and settled everyone's bill. Mr. McLaren, we look forward to having you with us starting next week, I said to Mr. McLaren, who was trying to calm his wife. Afterward, Letitia and I had a simple celebration together. Following that evening, Jody's group disbanded. None of her followers wanted to align with her after witnessing her behavior. She began avoiding me and gradually fell out of favor in social circles. A month later, her demeanor had noticeably changed, becoming more subdued. She attempted to integrate into other mom groups without success, but that's not my concern. Meanwhile, Letitia and I maintained our friendship, continuing to gather with our families during holidays. My relationship with McLaren remained strictly professional, unaffected by personal matters. Observing his dedication, I couldn't help but wonder if the incident that night had motivated him further. Regardless, taking a firm stand from the outset seemed to have paid off. Perhaps in human relationships, asserting oneself is indeed crucial for success. I cared for her for 5 years, but my mother's sobs could be heard from the audience as tears welled up in my husband's eyes. He's done nothing for all this time, yet he plays the good son so well. I'm the only one who knows the truth. You better realize this, John, I started. playing the audio evidence that would reveal my husband's true nature. My name is Sarah. I've been married to John for 7 years now. Currently, we live as a family of 3 with my bedridden mother-in-law. 5 years ago, her illness forced her into a bedridden lifestyle. My father-in-law had passed away before I got married, so there was no one else to care for her. At the time, John's work wasn't going well, and we were struggling to make ends meet. So he asked if we could live together with his mother, and she agreed. Feeling guilty about relying on her, I decided to take care of her while also working a part-time job. My mother-in-law seemed to feel guilty about being cared for. I continued, recounting how she often tried to reassure me. "Sarah, that's enough. Please don't worry about me." I always encouraged her with a strong will, I recalled. When she said this with a troubled smile, I replied, "What are you talking about? I'm indebted to you, mother-in-law. But it must be hard with both work and housework, plus taking care of me." "I don't want to burden you anymore, Sarah," she insisted. "It's not a burden at all. I want to be with you. That's why I'm doing this on my own accord," I reassured her. "But you should have your own happiness. Being able to talk to you every day like this is my happiness, so don't worry about it." Tears welled up in mother-in-law's eyes as she whispered a small thank you. There's not much that I can do, yet she always expresses her gratitude like this. Ever since we got married, my mother-in-law has been very kind to me, so taking care of her is not a burden at all. In fact, it feels like my mission. While I do enjoy caring for her, there's one thing I'm not satisfied with in my current life. My husband, John. He's what you'd call a traditional type who thinks housework is a woman's job. He wasn't that bad when we got married, but since we started living with his parents, he's become increasingly selfish. He doesn't contribute much to the household expenses, but his entitlement is as high as Everest. For instance, when he comes home, he starts yelling if I don't greet him at the door. "Hey Sarah, I'm home. Why aren't you greeting me? Hurry up, get my stuff." I frowned at my husband and voiced my complaints. "Listen, John, I've told you before, I'm not your servant. You should do what you can on your own." "Huh? What are you saying? Who do you think is making the money for this family?" "Yes, it's true that you're providing for us, but I'm also doing my part. I'm working part-time. Despite that, you speak to me like this. Shut up. Your earnings are just peanuts. You can't survive without me, so don't you dare defy me. And you? You can't even contribute properly to the living expenses. The only reason we can live in this house is undoubtedly thanks to your mother." At first, I would fight back, but my husband started threatening divorce every time we quarreled. "Watch yourself, Sarah. Keep this up and we'll get a divorce, got it? Please, not so loud. Your mother is in the other room." "Shut it. It's all because you're so insolent. Understand this. You'd be the one in trouble if we divorced. Do you get that? Just lower your voice and don't always talk about divorce like that." "Yeah, right. You would have nowhere to go if we got divorced. Besides, there's no company out there willing to hire a scrub like you full-time, Sarah." "Stop talking like that. Just shut up and listen to what I'm saying. You idiot. You're so slow." Honestly, I was more than ready to divorce my husband, but when I thought of my mother-in-law, I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. "You can always talk to me if you're troubled, Sarah. You're my precious daughter," my mother-in-law would reassure me. She was always very kind to me, as if we were truly mother and daughter. Because of her, I wanted to take care of her properly until the end. I wanted to repay her for all the kindness she had shown me. That's why I endured the painful days with my husband in this house. I couldn't entrust my mother-in-law's care to a man like him. Then one day, as I was preparing dinner, I heard the usual shouting from the entrance. "Hey Sarah, I'm home. Come out and greet me. I'm using the stove right now and can't leave it." "What, are you kidding me? What kind of wife doesn't prioritize her husband?" My husband, who had lost his patience, stormed into the living room. "Hey, what are you thinking? I always tell you to greet me when I come home. Why don't you understand?" As you can see, I was just frying something. "I don't care. You should have timed it to be finished when I come home. You're useless." "Well, you never tell me when you'll be home. I told you not to talk back. A useless and insolent wife is nothing but garbage." My mother-in-law, who had come out upon hearing the harsh words, spoke in a stern voice. "John, that is no way to talk, is it?" "Oh, Mom, you're still alive. Sarah is working hard every day for this household for both of you and me. That's what a wife is supposed to do, right? She earns a little, is half-baked in housekeeping. She's basically social trash. Enough is enough. My usually quiet mother-in-law raised her voice on the spot. You wouldn't say what you want about me. Don't you dare slander Sarah. What, Mom? Are you on Sarah's side too? You two are colluding, huh? My mother-in-law, who usually remains silent, continued to speak. This time, John, one request. Ha! What is it? Just put me in a nursing home. I don't want to be a burden on Sarah anymore. Ha! A nursing home. Where do you think we have that kind of money? We still have your father's inheritance and my pension. I don't need a fancy place. At my mother-in-law's unexpected remark, I was at a loss for words. Mother-in-law, have you been considering this? Thinking about me? Tears welled up in my eyes at the thought of her kindness. However, it was completely lost on my husband. At the suggestion, he made a deeply disgusted face. Don't joke around. There's no way we're putting you in a nursing home. That's a waste of money. Please don't say that. Life would be easier in this house if I wasn't here. If we put you in a facility, the neighbors and my colleagues will start gossiping that I'm an ungrateful son, won't they? You don't need to worry about what people think. I still want to be a burden to you. Then shut up and do as you're told, old woman. I'm taking care of you. Isn't that enough? John, you don't do anything. Huh? I let you live in this house and I make Sarah work too. Isn't that enough for you, ungrateful woman? Unable to bear my husband's words, I raised my voice. Are you talking about who's the ungrateful one here? This house originally belonged to your mother, didn't it? Ah, are you talking back to me again? But that's true, isn't it? 5 years ago, when you were fired, we were in trouble, and didn't your mother-in-law gladly take us in? How can you say that? Ah, shut up, both of you. And I'm not doing this reluctantly. I'm taking care of mother-in-law out of my own will. Stop making unilateral decisions. Despite my desperate plea, my husband just said, "That's true. Troublesome," and left the room. In the awkward silence, my mother-in-law kept apologizing and crying. It's not your fault, mother-in-law. The one at fault is John. Every day, I was frustrated by a reality that I could not control. A few days later, while I was cleaning the house, a man who claimed to be an acquaintance of my mother-in-law's came to visit. Mother-in-law looked surprised, but she wore a full smile. Oh, is that you, Jackson? You came to visit. Well, if I was asked to visit my senior Linda, I couldn't refuse, could I? I remember treating you a lot at work when we were younger, right? Yes, yes, I'm grateful. So what's your will? Why did you call me today? Ah, yes, actually, looking at me, mother-in-law said, sorry, could you step out for a bit? Assuming they had a lot to catch up on, I happily agreed, saying, sure, and went out to buy some sweets. This man Jackson apparently was a junior when mother-in-law was working. It had been a while since I saw mother-in-law looking so happy. When I thought it was time to come back, Jackson was just about to leave. Oh, excuse me, I'm about to make tea. No, that's fine. We finished our conversation, but thank you for always taking care of Linda. She's a benefactor to me, so it's reassuring to know that she has a daughter like you. He bowed his head to me and left. Since then, Jackson has been regularly visiting mother-in-law, and they always have a lively conversation. It was a few months later that my mother-in-law's condition worsened, and she had to be rushed to the hospital. When I urgently called my husband, he responded with disbelief. My mom's in danger. As if I care. You're there, you can handle it. But the doctor said her condition's unpredictable. Please, I need you. Ah, no way. Plus, I'm leaving for a business trip today. What now? Of all times, please try to cancel it. Are you stupid? There's no way I can do that. Handle it on your own and don't call me until I reach out first. With that, he hung up abruptly. Not knowing what to do, I slumped down in front of my mother-in-law's hospital room. He's going on a business trip while his mother is in this state? This is just too cruel. How am I supposed to tell my mother-in-law? Just as I was sinking into despair, Jackson appeared. Oh, Sarah, what's wrong? Ah, Jackson. Something happened, right? Let's go to your mother-in-law's room for now. Okay. When we entered the room, my mother-in-law looked at us and struggled to speak. Jackson, you're here. So, does that mean you did what I asked? Yeah, but are you sure about this? Of course. I have to clear things up before I go, don't I? I understand. Then my mother-in-law weakly took my hand. Sarah, there's something I want you to know. What is it? My son has been withdrawing money from my account for his pension and spending it on his mistress. An affair? He's Well, he's a man who treated me like a maid. I had some idea from the start, but to think he was even taking money from his mother's pension. I asked Jackson to investigate the matter. I see, so that's why my mother-in-law called Jackson to the house. Jackson, please record what I'm about to say. It will be my last will. Understood, Linda. Jackson slowly took out a voice recorder. Once he finished recording everything, he placed it in my hand. How you use this recording is up to you, Sarah. Up to me? Yes, I'm the only one who can avenge my mother-in-law. I squeezed her frail hand back with strength. The next day, my mother-in-law passed away, leaving her final revenge in my hands. On the day of the funeral, 2 days later, my mother-in-law, who had always been popular, drew a large crowd. Seeing this, my husband made an inappropriate comment. Wow, I didn't expect so many people to come. It's a great opportunity to show off my skills as chief mourner. What are you talking about? You weren't even there when she died. Ignoring my reproach, he continued casually, I'll make everyone cry with my touching eulogy. My bosses from work are here too. If they're moved by how filial I am, it could boost my reputation and lead to a promotion. Just kidding. How can you act like this when your mother just passed away? Just think about it. Now that mom's gone, I'll get dad's inheritance, right? Man, I'm so lucky. Ignoring my trembling rage, my husband cheerfully went on to give the eulogy. After the formalities, he began talking about taking care of his mother. Then, with tears in his eyes, he said, I have devoted myself to caring for my mother for 5 years, but in vain. She has passed away. But I have no regrets. I am proud that I could support my mother until the end. At my husband's eulogy, sobs could be heard from the audience. Perhaps pleased with the reaction, my husband continued to speak indefinitely with a touch of drama as if he had always been a dutiful son. The attendees, oblivious, listened to his story with tears in their eyes. Thank you all for today, he concluded. With his closing words, I stood up. As the room began to stir, I stood before my husband and took out a voice recorder. What are you doing? Ignoring my husband's restraint, I raised my voice to the attendees. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, please listen to this recording. As I pressed the play button, my mother-in-law's voice flowed from the voice recorder. Her voice at that time, recorded in the hospital. Thank you all for attending today. There's something I absolutely want you to hear, so I've left this voice message. My husband and even the attendees were stunned by the unexpected turn of events. I believe you've just heard my son's speech. Probably he was talking as if he had been a dutiful son. The recording continued in my mother-in-law's voice that knew my boastful husband well. She had a good grasp of his likely behavior as a parent. I increased the volume of the voice recorder so that everyone could hear. However, my son did not care for me. He just kept shouting at me and my daughter-in-law, Sarah. Of course, we have audio evidence of him verbally abusing Sarah and me. As my husband's face turned red, he shouted, What is this? Stop this. Ignoring him, I continued to play the recording. Besides, hi son, I was withdrawing my pension from my account without my permission. I'm giving it to another woman, not Sarah. One day, I noticed something odd about my son and had an old friend look into it, and this fact came to light. The attendees were all filled with anger, while my husband turned pale. Finally, my mother-in-law delivered a final blow to my husband from heaven. I have a request for everyone. Please do not give my inheritance to my son. You could donate it, destroy it, whatever. Anyway, I will not forgive my son. I need your help. With those words, the voice ceased. My husband was in a panic, shouting something, but no one was there to help him. On the contrary, all of the attendees were giving him cold stares. Looking down at my husband, I said coldly, Do you understand? This is the result of what you've been doing. You abandoned the care of your mother and were having an affair. You've learned a lot from this, haven't you? Wait, Sarah, I was wrong. So, you are not going to say something stupid like, help me, are you? Let me tell you, I will never forgive you. After tormenting your mother and ridiculing people, there's no one who's going to help you. Suffer in hell. In the midst of the attendees' cold stares, my husband collapsed onto the ground, pale-faced. After that, I divorced my husband. There was no reason for me to be with him now that my mother-in-law had passed away. I later heard that he had been fired from his job. His boss had been at the funeral, so it was a predictable outcome. I demanded alimony from my ex-husband for his mistress. Apparently, his mistress was furious about this and promptly dumped him. A few months later, my ex-husband was able to find a new job through Jackson's introduction, but that was also part of my mother-in-law's plan. My ex-husband was working at a company known to Jackson, and from his salary, he was paying me alimony. Thanks to this, the alimony is paid to me every month without fail. Meanwhile, I started living alone with the money my mother-in-law had left me. Jackson, who was worried about me, even introduced me to a full-time job. All of this was apparently in my mother-in-law's will. I can't thank my mother-in-law enough for everything she's done for me. I said a prayer in front of my mother-in-law's grave and thanked her in my heart. Thank you so much, mother-in-law. I swore to myself that I would cherish this life I was given thanks to my mother-in-law. I'm Logan. I'm 19 years old and I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm from Texas, but now I live in New York City for college. My parents are in Dallas, where my dad works as a surgeon at a university hospital, and my mom stays home. After high school, I moved to New York and I've been on my own for about 4 months now, since July. My dad's work inspired me to study hard and get into medical school. But since coming here, I haven't had the typical college experience I hoped for. I've been focused on my studies, which is important, but I also wanted to hang out with friends and join clubs. Unfortunately, money has been tight, so I couldn't do those things. My parents pay my tuition, but I have to pay for everything else like rent and living expenses. To make ends meet, I've been doing different jobs like tutoring, working at events, and even at a bar. But it's been tough. I often have to switch between shifts at different jobs just to get by each month. Weekends are when I try to earn the most money. I never really had a day off. It was tough both mentally and physically. I get sleepy during class, and when I come home late at night, I'm too tired to study. I'm worried I might fail my classes and have to repeat the year if things keep going like this. Studying should be my top priority, but I'm struggling to focus. I felt anxious and desperate, so I called my mom for some financial help, even if it was just a little. My dad is hardly ever home because he's busy with his job, so my mom handles the finances. I thought they could help because my dad earns well, but my mom said they couldn't afford to send extra money. Many of my friends get financial help from their parents, and I wished I had that too. Despite all this, I kept working hard at my jobs. The midterms came, but I hadn't studied enough, and as I expected, I had to retake some exams. After finishing the retests in early August, my summer vacation began. I'm planning to work a lot during this long break to earn as much money as possible. Once summer is over, I'll focus more on my studies. That means cutting down on work hours, which should help my finances. To save money, I've been eating cheap foods like instant noodles, bread, and discounted meals. I also use my bike instead of paying for transportation. Growing up, I never had to worry about money, so this new life of financial struggle is unexpected and tough. Despite all this, I stay in touch with college friends through texts. Seeing their fun photos makes me realize how different our lives are, even though we go to the same university. My friends often invited me out, but I had to reluctantly decline because I didn't have the money or the time. Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything, I suggested. One of our classmates messaged me, "Are you sure you're okay? You always seem tired at school, and I think you're working too much." My friend was concerned about me. I've got the physical stamina, and I need to earn my living expenses. Let's meet up once school starts again, I replied. After that, I went to work at the bar as usual, but something happened shortly after. I collapsed during my shift. It was a busy Friday with lots of customers, and as I was carrying drinks, I suddenly felt dizzy. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I found myself in the hospital. According to the doctor, I collapsed due to exhaustion and malnutrition. I received treatment and was allowed to go home the same day. I immediately called my boss at the bar to apologize. My boss explained that after I collapsed, he had called my name, but I was too out of it to respond, so he called an ambulance. He had also contacted my parents. "You've been taking on a lot of shifts, and I relied too much on that. I'm sorry about that. I want you to rest easy for the rest of the month," my boss said. This meant a cut in my income. As I rode the subway home from the hospital, I wondered if I should take on more tutoring jobs. I found myself at a loss. I was supposed to work at the bar the next day, but that suddenly turned into a day off. I decided to quietly stay in bed today. While checking my phone, I noticed a message from my friend that I had missed while I was unconscious. I replied and explained why my response was delayed. Upon learning about my situation, my friend decided to come over. He bought groceries at the supermarket and made spaghetti for me. While eating the meal he had kindly prepared, our conversation turned to the topic of living expenses for someone living alone. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from home, my friend was surprised. "That's why you've been working so hard. Your dad's a doctor. You should be getting some support." "No," I explained. "I asked Mom, and she said they're barely managing with just my tuition." "But you're an only child, right? Maybe if you ask, they could send a little support," my friend suggested. My mom said even a small amount of support was out of the question. "No way, that doesn't make sense. I hate to say this, but maybe your dad is sick and can't work," my friend speculated. Thinking it over, I said, "My dad is a doctor and used to drive a luxury car. Our house is in an upscale neighborhood, and I went to private schools my whole life. So why would Mom suddenly say they have no money?" Suddenly worried, I immediately messaged my mom. "Are you both okay?" She replied after a while, "We're fine," but I couldn't relax, thinking maybe they were just saying that to keep me from worrying. Since I had planned to go home for the holidays, I decided to talk to my parents about this. After thanking my friend, he said, "I'll be waiting for some souvenirs." I felt grateful to have such a friend. The holiday season came and I took the cheapest flight I could find back home. I could only stay for a night and a day because of my job, but I was looking forward to it. When I arrived, my parents greeted me at the door. My dad seemed surprised when he saw me. "You've lost a lot of weight." "Really?" I hadn't noticed myself, but apparently I looked quite different. My mom was also taken aback and fell silent. For lunch, my mom had prepared things like salad, soup, and chicken wings, and for the first time in a long while, the three of us sat down to eat together. As soon as we sat down, my dad looked worried and asked, "You look thinner. Are you eating properly?" I told him the truth. "Not really. It's been a while since I had such a luxurious meal." "What do you usually eat?" "Cafeteria food," my dad asked. "Nah, the cafeteria is too expensive for me." "Is it that expensive?" "It's about $5 or so." My dad looked puzzled. "Is the money I've been sending enough for you?" Confused, I responded, "Huh? I haven't been getting any money." I finally told my dad. "What do you mean?" "So you mean to tell me you haven't received any money for the past 4 months?" he asked, shocked. "I haven't received any," I replied. "Have you really been sending money?" "I had asked your mom to transfer $2,000 every month into your account," Dad said, surprised. "Really?" I was surprised. "Mom told me that your finances were tight and that she couldn't afford to send any money," I explained. Dad looked perplexed. "We have enough money." "Paisley, have you been sending money to Logan properly?" he asked Mom. Mom looked down silently. I was worried that maybe Dad got sick or something and couldn't work, and that's why the money wasn't coming. "No, I've been working as usual," Dad assured. "Really? That's a relief," I said, somewhat relieved. But then why hadn't any money been sent to me? I was baffled. "Cassie, what's going on?" Dad pressed Mom. Still refusing to meet our eyes, Mom remained silent. "Come on, don't stay silent. Can you explain?" Dad insisted. When Dad pressed her, Mom finally said quietly, "I haven't sent any money." "What?" "I haven't sent any money to Logan," she admitted. Hearing this, both my dad and I were stunned. "What? Why not?" Dad asked, incredulous. "There are just so many expenses," Mom replied. "What kind of expenses? Isn't our home mortgage already paid off?" Dad questioned. Realizing she could no longer hide the truth, Mom dropped a bombshell. "I've been keeping the money for myself," she confessed. I was dumbstruck. I read online that medical students can earn more than regular students with tutoring jobs, so I thought you'd be okay. I asked you to send me even just a small amount of money, but honestly, I didn't realize you were that strapped for cash," Mom explained. My mom continued in a matter-of-fact tone. "There was a call from Logan's workplace recently saying you collapsed from overwork. I was also shocked to see how thin you've become." "What? Logan collapsed? What happened?" It seemed my dad hadn't been informed about the recent events, so I explained. "You collapsed from overwork and malnutrition." "Yeah, but it wasn't anything serious," I added. "Paisley, why didn't you tell me?" my dad asked, clearly upset. "I'm sorry. I was afraid he'd find out I wasn't sending the money," my mom said without any sign of guilt. "This is outrageous. Logan had to work until he collapsed because he didn't have any money," Dad exclaimed. "I didn't mean any harm," my mom defended herself. What have you been using all the money for? Dad confronted her. After a brief pause, she finally spoke up. Well, actually, I have some debts. What? Those were unimaginable words coming from her, who always seemed to perfectly manage the household and even took care of the garden flowers. I thought. The money was used to pay off my debts, Mom continued. Debt? How much do you owe? Dad asked, clearly in disbelief. Mom, still looking down, said quietly, about $100,000. $100,000. I was shocked by the amount. My dad sighed deeply. Why do you have so much debt? I got into gambling, Mom confessed. Basically, I had gotten myself into gambling debts without our knowledge. Why would you even start something like that? Dad asked, holding his head in his hands. About 2 years ago, I started gambling just to kill time. I won some money and it felt really good at first. I'd only used small amounts, but going to the casino became a habit, and I started betting more and more. I couldn't stop, and it led to that amount. I had never gambled, so I couldn't understand why she couldn't stop. Yes, I kept trying to win back what I lost, but I ended up losing more often than winning. I even dipped into our savings, she admitted. So you've spent more than just the debt amount? Dad yelled at her. How much of our savings did you use? He demanded. About $30,000, Mom confessed. I stopped withdrawing more because I thought you would find out. She looked like she was about to cry. If you'd talked to me about it earlier, it might have been better. With that amount, you could have worked part-time and paid it back little by little, right? Dad said. I absolutely don't want to work part-time, she said emphatically. Get a grip. You racked up the debt yourself. He was visibly angry. I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. There's no way I can work now. That's why I borrowed money from payday lenders, she confessed. I was stunned by her selfish reasoning. Then the interest piled up and the debt just grew. I got involved with various lenders, and now I can't make payments anywhere. I'm completely overwhelmed. Dad sighed again. Are you still gambling in this situation? Yes, I see no choice, Mom admitted. Then I'll pay off the debt for you, Dad said decisively. Really? Mom stood up from her chair, her face brightening with joy. I knew you would help me. She rushed towards him, looking moved. However, things didn't turn out as favorably for her. But this is your severance. Let's get a divorce, Dad said abruptly. What? I was surprised. Divorce? I will never agree to a divorce, Mom said firmly. Her face turned from joy to terror, as if she had been cast down from heaven to hell. You continued gambling even knowing Logan was struggling, right? You kept borrowing money, endangering the family, Dad pointed out. That's true, but I can't continue as a family with a wife who prioritizes gambling over her son, he insisted. No way, she finally burst into tears. I'll never gamble again. Please forgive me, she pleaded. But he seemed resolute. Your gambling is likely an addiction. You'll need to see a psychiatrist and undergo long-term treatment. It's not uncommon for people to relapse into gambling during treatment. I'm not addicted. I can stop anytime, she protested. No, if this continues, we could all end up destitute. I have to separate, not just for my sake, but to stop burdening Logan any further. I'll stop from tomorrow, she insisted, but she did not seem to grasp the severity of her inability to stop gambling. I was deeply anxious about the amount of debt and my mom's pathological gambling behavior. In exchange for paying your severance, there will be no division of assets, my dad stated. What? I can't agree to those terms. If you don't pay back the debt, they might seize your account. She fell silent. I never imagined coming home after a long time would lead to this situation. I was just unsettled by my parents fighting. No, Dad, don't you think we can hold off on deciding about divorce? Maybe take some time to cool off and think it over, I suggested. I'm sorry, Logan, but that's not possible, he said calmly. I thought he might have decided on divorce in a fit of despair, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Lunch ended in a heavy atmosphere, and I went to my room. I lay down on the sofa, but I could still hear my parents arguing. It wasn't much of an argument. My mom was hysterically screaming, and my dad responded firmly. I got so fed up with college and home that I just went to sleep out of frustration. The next morning, my mom looked awful, probably from crying all night. I had planned to stay at home a bit longer, but the oppressive atmosphere made me decide to leave early. My dad drove me to the airport. Logan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, he apologized to me. No, it's not your fault, Dad. I'm grateful for the chance to attend medical school, I reassured him. I'll start transferring an allowance directly to your account from now on, so don't worry, he said. Yeah, thanks, Dad. It really helps, I replied. I know things are tough, but take care, he said as he dropped me off. I flew back to New York. The rest of the summer vacation was busy with work, passing by in a flash. Still, I was constantly worried about my parents. A few months later, I heard that my mom finally agreed to the divorce. My dad's steadfastness broke her resistance. As previously discussed, my dad took on her debts, and in return, there was no asset division in their divorce agreement. I have mixed feelings about my parents getting divorced, but it's not all bad news. Now that I'm receiving an allowance from my dad, I've been able to cut back on work and focus more on my studies. I might even get to hang out with friends. I heard from my grandmother on my mother's side that despite the divorce over her gambling, my mom was back at the slot machines every day. She quickly racked up more debt. Her family couldn't afford to cover her debts, so my mom reluctantly started working part-time. She's currently attending therapy to